Good evening, everyone. My name is Paolo Barlera. I'm the interim director of the Italian Cultural Institute of New York, and I am extremely pleased to welcome you to a webinar that has been organized by Ilaria Costa. Big thank you to Ilaria and our friends at IACE, the Italian American Committee on Education, that is doing so much for the Italian language on the East Coast. The theme is, in fact, the Italian language, and the occasion is the publication of a new book, an e-book to be precise, by best-selling author Dianne Hales. And I would like to say that I'm very fond of the words that Dianne uses in her books. La bella lingua, la passione, which we see in the background over there, and amore. So keep on using these words. I like them very much. So we are privileged to have Dianne Hales joining us from California for a conversation with Maria Teresa Cometto, a journalist and frequent collaborator of the Italian Cultural Institute and vice president of IACE. Thank you for joining us tonight, and the screen is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Paolo, for hosting this special event. I'm very proud to be the vice president of IACE, the Italian American Committee on Education, which is a great organization. We promote the study of Italian culture and language in hundreds of schools in the 3 states, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. And also IACE organizes courses for adults at the Italian Cultural Institute, courses that are going on also right now online. The president of IACE, Berardo Paradiso, the general manager, Ilaria Costa, and I had this idea to engage Dianne for this event, because her book A is for Amore is really great, beautiful, brilliant, so entertaining and informative also. And we hope that Dianne's passion for Italy and for the Italian language encourages more and more friends, American, New Yorker friends, to start learning Italian and to enroll into IACE courses. So a special thanks to Dianne for being available. And yeah, let's start with some questions. We are going to be joined maybe later by some of the students who learn Italian with the support of IACE. And also you from the audience can send us your questions through the question and answer app in the chat room on Zoom or on the Facebook page of the Italian Cultural Institute. Dianne, as Paolo mentioned earlier, has written many other books that are bestsellers, like La Passione, How Italy Seduced the World, La Bella Lingua, My Love Affair with Italian, the world's most enchanting language, thank you, which is translated also in Italian, La Bella Lingua. And also I want to mention that for her contributions to promoting Italian language, she was awarded a very important honor. She was awarded with the Cavaliere dell'Ordine della Stella della Solidarietà Italiana by the Italian president. Congratulations, Dianne. So, A is for Amore, the title of your book, Love. You explain in the introduction that this book is your love letter to Italy, its people, and all your readers. Why and when did you fall in love with Italian?
Well, first, I just want to say a thank you to the Italian Cultural Institute of New York City, and also to Yachi, because with every book, your institutions have reached out. And one of my favorite phrases in Italian is "mi sento a mio agio." And when I am with you, virtually or literally, I feel at home. I feel that your culture has embraced me, and I'm always delighted to work with you. And I feel that we are indeed spirits of the soul. And why and when did I fall in love? Well, as usually happens, I never intended to. I will say up front that I'm not of Italian descent. I'm 100% Polish. I happened to make my way to Italy almost by accident. I had written my first book, which was called The Book of Sleep, and the DuPont company invited me to come to Gstaad to give a talk. And so I went to Gstaad and I gave my talk, and then I went to Geneva and I was going to explore Switzerland. And it was cold, it was rainy, it was miserable. And I saw, this was a while back, it was easy to travel then, I saw that a train was leaving for Italy. And at the very last moment, I got a ticket and I got on board and I went to Italy. I didn't know any Italian. I had not done any of the research and homework I usually do when I go on a trip. And so all I knew how to say was, mi dispiace, non parlo l'italiano. And I used this phrase constantly. And I had all sorts of misadventures. My luggage was left at the border. I had to spend a night in Milan waiting for the luggage to come to the train station. And yet what I remembered most was this language. And everywhere I went, people talked to me. They talked at me. They talked around me. They talked over it. And I so yearned to communicate with Italians that I swore to myself that before I come back to this country, I am going to learn some Italian. And I had a wonderful time, mind you. I went to Milano, I went to Florence. I was bumped off a plane in Rome and ended up spending some time in Rome. And I came back and thought, oh my goodness, I have fallen head over heels in love with this country and these people. And so I started studying Italian, and I studied it every which way I could find. I was busy, I had a career, a husband, a child, and yet every year practically since then, I've gone back to Italy. This is my first year without Italy in decades.
Oh.
And so that's the why and the when.
So sorry about it, but I hope that sooner we all will be able to go back to Italy to have some great time there. So second letter, B. B is for bello, beautiful. Dante first dubbed Italy il bel paese, the beautiful country. And one of the Italian most popular expression is fare bella figura. So Dianne, what should a person do per fare bella figura in Italy?
Well, I think basically we Americans tend to translate that as make a good impression or be at your best behavior. But it's more than that. I think it's really an approach to life. It's living life with an elegance, with an ease, with an awareness that your words, your actions, your appearance matter. And so I think one of the differences is that Americans, when they go on vacation, we dress as if we're going to Disney World. You know, we have baseball caps and the running shoes and the shorts. And Italians, I see Italians going to the gym, and the women have makeup on, and the men always are dressed neatly. And it's a matter of presenting oneself to the world. So I think that for one thing, I think Italians are very tolerant of Americans. They understand that we have a more casual culture where we have a different dress code, shall we speak? But I think there are things that we as Americans, as tourists, should do when we go to Italy. One is to just learn the simplest phrases. Buongiorno, buonasera. Ciao is really a casual, something you say to friends. You wouldn't walk out into an office and say, hi. It's the same thing. You say buongiorno. You say, please. Per favore, you say thank you, grazie, you say you're welcome, prego. It makes all of the difference. And it's also just a way of respecting you're sitting in this capital, this center of art and beauty and culture. Italians don't sort of sit on the monuments and eat sandwiches and drink coffee. It's that sort of being respectful of these places. You don't, and Italy is full of churches. That's what you go and you see the art and you're just just inspired by it all. And it's the important thing is just to cover your shoulders, cover your knees, to remember that this is a house of God, this is a house of beauty, this is a house of culture. So I think that you don't have to stop being American, but I think it's a way of showing respect and acknowledging that you understand a little bit, and also you get so much in return. When you act with bella figura, people respond to you. People will. I remember when I was taking my first lessons, and the professore said to me, "How do you say I want a cup of coffee?" And I said, "Voglio," and he said, "No. Voglio is for babies. Only babies say I want. You must say vorrei." And then he decided, nope, you should always sound like a lady. You should say mi piacerebbe. It would be pleasing to me. So that I learned all this. I get to Italy and I'm walking down the road, jogging in the morning, and there's a dog that's fallen down the hillside. And the owner says, "Oh, please, please call my dog." And I turned to the dog and I said, "Mi piacerebbe." You would come back to me. So, but I think it's, again, it's one way of connecting with the Italians. It's a way of showing that you respect. And you also, I think, have, it adds to the adventure. You're feeling like you're, all right, I'm really leaving behind my American self and becoming a little Italian.
Thank you. I'm sure you fai una bellissima figura in Italy. Sì, well, actually, ci in Italian, ci is for cucina, cooking. What is your favorite Italian food, Dianne?
Well, how long do you have? I can't. I would find it easier to think. I think the eels are the only thing that I have not appreciated in Italy. I love the fiori di zucca, the flowers of zucchini, and they're, sometimes you find that dish here in American restaurants, but it's never the same because it's light as air when it's made in Italy. I love carpaccio. I love, well, the thing is that the ingredients themselves, the burrata, the fresh cheeses, the cheeses that literally somebody trucks them in from Naples, overnight, and you can just taste the freshness of everything. I love, I've yet to meet a flavor of gelato that I did not fall for. And I do like semifreddos and sabayone, so I do always save room for dessert. And I think we spend a lot of time by the seaside. And so what amazes me is that there are flavors of fish. And I don't know if it's the what swims in the Mediterranean or if it's the way that Italians prepare them, but there are these exquisite, there's like a large shrimp, gamberoni, and it just prepared in such ways that you almost taste the sea as you're eating it. And now I'm hungry.
Do you cook an Italian recipe?
Let me see. I make like a linguine with crab or something like that. I have attempted. People have tried to teach me. When I was in Bologna, I had a wonderful experience learning to make pasta and rolling out the pasta, and also not realizing until the rhythm of it and the way you move your hands and the way you move your body with it. And it gave me a great appreciation for. But it's when I get back to America, my American life, somehow I just buy the pasta on the shelves. But when I'm when I'm in Italy, I always like sort of being in the kitchen and seeing how it's all put together.
Yeah, great. D is for Dante Alighieri. You write that Dante's legacy has proven to be timeless, and you mention very interesting. That in his memoir of imprisonment at Auschwitz in World War II, the writer Primo Levi recalled reciting from memory a canto from La Divina Commedia to a young man who wanted to learn Italian. As he pronounced the poet's words, Levi felt that he too was hearing them for the first time, quote, "like the blast of a trumpet, like the voice of God. For a moment I forgot who we were and where we were," unquote. However, La Divina Commedia is quite complicated and difficult to read. Do you have suggestions about easier books to start with for our Italian learners?
Well, I will confess that I was very put off by Dante, and I felt that I would never even want to attempt it. And then I went to a seminar in San Francisco, and the instructor had a comic book of Dante that she said she used in her grade school when she was a grade school student in Italy. And so, so she lent it to me. And that was how I first read the Divine Comedy in Italian in comic book form. So I would suggest, and I've since bought, they still sell them children's versions of it. And I don't think that's a bad way to start, because if for people who follow Harry Potter, for people who love Game of Thrones, it's that kind of book. You know, there's such great scenes, there's such great characters. So I would say, you know, don't write off Dante, but start with some of these ones that are, you know, and I don't know, like, you are the Italian teachers, so I shouldn't keep, perhaps I shouldn't say this, but I also read a lot of Italian other comic books like Diabolique and Dylan Dog and Tex. And I found them, we were renting a house, and they must have had at some point, the kids in the family had all of these comic books. And I don't remember, I'm not a comic book fan. It wasn't as if I thought, oh, I finally found my genre. But the thing is that you can read the sentences, they're easy to follow. And so again, I'm not, you'll get past that stage, but it really is fun. And you really kind of see how the words are used in a colloquial way. I'm very big on reading newspapers, and you can read them online. Read La Repubblica, Corriere della Sera. You know, these are, and magazines, again, because anything that's, when it's talking about the world, even if it's talking about Corona, you can follow it, and it's really you're understanding it without really working at it. I also really like, with Netflix and Amazon Prime, there are so many Italian shows you can watch, and I think I have seen every episode of Don Matteo. And again, that show in particular is very simple Italian. Some of the others, I love My Brilliant Friend, but that's very hard. There's a lot of Sicilian or Neapolitan in it, you know, so a lot of it is harder. But I definitely watch movies, watch them with English subtitles, and then change after you know to the Italian subtitles. And that's another way that I found of getting into the language. And then there's a wonderful book called In Altre Parole, by Giacomo Puccini. It's written in parallel. Every page is English and Italian, and that's another really nice exercise. And so, and old classic movies like Roma Città Aperta and La Strada. You know, again, this is just another way. Just immerse yourself in the words, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, great suggestion. Thank you, Dianne. E is for espresso, the Italian coffee. Do you have a special place where you like sipping espresso in Italy?
Well, when we're in Italy, I'm almost always writing. And so I get up early and I have a little mocha machine and I make a coffee, and I go outside and I look at, there's always a view, and I look at the view, and I think that's like the best espresso of the day. But when I'm in cities, I also look for places with the view. And so there are the bars that look on the Pantheon. In Venice, you sit on the Grand Canal. In Capri, there's that famous little piazzetta. And in Florence, you sit in the Piazza della Repubblica, you know, and so I kind of think that it's great when you sip your espresso, that you also just sort of feel like you're imbibing the culture around you. So it's not just the coffee, it's everything else.
Great. F is for Firenze, Florence. Is Florence the city that you like most?
Well, it's hard not to like Florence, and I've always had a very fond place in my heart for it. But it was interesting. I also wrote a book called Mona Lisa, and it's a biography of the real woman in Leonardo's painting. And so what I had to do there was actually go to Florence and recreate her life in the Renaissance. And that's when I really fell in love with Florence. It turns out she was born on a street, a kind of squalid street called Via Squazza. And back then, there were even in the archives, there were reports of how badly it smelled, and it still smells today. and so I literally kind of went to all of the places where she lived as a girl, where her husband's family lived, the baptistry where she was baptized, the house that she and her husband lived on, several houses. Her daughter went into a convent, Sant'Orsola, which is an abandoned ruin, and that's where she went and ended for the final years of her life. And so when I was trying to recreate her life and go to the churches where she prayed and go go to the, the places where she would have gone for shops and where she would have just gathered with her family. That's when I came to appreciate Florence, not just that tourist Florence, not just that, this wonder of art that we're so impressed by, but what it must have been like to live there in the Renaissance. So since I devoted quite a bit of time to seeing that part of Florence, it always, when I go there, I feel a special bond to it beyond the David and beyond the Duomo and everything else that's wonderful. I just sort of, I just feel that it was a chance to travel back in time, not just to a different place.
Yeah, fascinating. Talking about Mona Lisa, the chapter about Elle is about Leonardo da Vinci. But Mona Lisa is in Paris at the Louvre Museum. Do you have any suggestion about masterpieces by Leonardo to go and visit in Italy? Where?
Well, if you're in Florence, of course, you go to the Uffizi and you can see his Annunciation. You can see the Adoration of the Magi. There also are some sketches and drawings in Milano, and it's we went and we saw the Last Supper, which is in the refectory at Santa Maria della Grazia, I believe, and then in Venice, there you can find the Vitruvian Man, but it's you sort of expect to see more Leonardo and there are mechanical museums and different settings, different places, but yes, unfortunately, you have to go to Paris to find Mona Lisa.
Yeah. Well, after L, M is for moda, fashion. I didn't know, and I learned from your book, that Giovan Battista Giorgini was the creator of the label Made in Italy and the father of modern Italian fashion. So can you tell us more about Giorgini?
Yes, well, Giorgini, he was sort of an aristocrat entrepreneur, and before World War II, he would come to America and go to the fancy stores, the Magnums, the Saks, the best places, and sell clothes that came from Italian tailors, and there was at that time the first fashion house really wasn't set up until the 1940s, but would bring Italian merchandise. So then the war came, everything shut down. Then after the war, everything was rebuilding, and there were these wonderful sisters, the Fontana sisters, who started the first salon in Rome. And he had the idea, though, of wouldn't it be great to bring Americans to Italy and introduce them to Italian fashion? And so he opened up his family home, which was a beautiful villa in Florence. He invited the buyers from all of the top-notch American stores and one American journalist. The show was such a hit that the next year, this first show was in 1951. The next year, there were 200 buyers who came. And the buzz started. By the fifth year, they had moved into the Pitti Palace, into the White Room, and he invited aristocrats, nobles, descendants from Florence to come and reenact a wedding with torches. I just wish I could have been there. There's like one night to travel back, and it was then that the Made in Italy, the idea that the world was going to start looking to Italy for great design, and then you had Valentino and Pucci, and leading up to Armani. So that was in Milan. There's a wonderful museum dedicated just to Armani. So I happen to like clothes, as you might have guessed, but it's just astounding to sort of stand back and see how recent, it was. Paris was the place that everyone thought had to be the center, and how Italian designers have had so much influence in the last half century, 70 years.
Oh, very, very interesting. O is for opera. You write, quote, "The first Italian composer to sweep me off my feet was Giacomo Puccini." What's so special about him?
Well, I discovered opera also sort of by accident. I went to Columbia for graduate school, And I discovered back then that for $5, I could get a ticket to almost anything, actually, in New York City. And these are like the farthest seats away, way far up, sometimes just standing room. But the New York City Opera was in its glory. Beverly Sills was singing the bel canto repertoire. And so I would go, and I discovered that not everybody was as enchanted as I was, and that people would actually leave. And so I would make my way closer and closer to the stage. And so, and I didn't know Italian then. And yet when I heard Puccini, I thought, it's like, I'm not listening with my ears anymore. I'm listening with my heart. And that's I truly respect and enjoy Verdi, and he stirs the soul and he stirs the intellect, and there's nothing like a Verdi chorus. But Puccini, when he has Butterfly waiting on Belvedremo, just waiting, just waiting for her lover, and alone and abandoned, or in La Bohème, where you have the lovers sing, they start these everyday things, your cold little hand, and then they fall in love they touch each other looking for a lost key. There's such simple scenes, and Puccini said he wanted to capture great emotions in little souls. And I think what he did was he said everybody's life has opera in it. Everybody's life has great emotion in it. It doesn't have to be just for kings and emperors. And there's the sweep of his music. The last time I was in New York, which was, it seems an eternity ago, but it was last fall, I went to see Turandot at the Met, and Turandot is over the top in every way, and the Met's classic production is even more so. But it's there, and I think you almost feel your chest swelling and your heart opening up, and that's, I think, the power of Puccini.
Yeah, talking about following the Italian words of Italian opera. At the Metropolitan Opera House here in New York, you can follow now the Italian subtitles. Yeah, mm-hmm. It was introduced a few years ago thanks to several donors, Italian lovers of the opera. So that's another good way to practice Italian, to go to opera house and to follow the Italian words.
Well, one of my teachers is the tutor for the opera here in San Francisco. She works with the singers for the Italian works, and I do think that. And her point was that just hearing opera, there's something about just listening to the words and listening to the music of it, and it's good for the brain. It's good for the soul, if you ask me.
Yes, P is of course for pasta. Mm-hmm. You quote, and I didn't know this quote. You quote the General Giuseppe Garibaldi predicting, quote, "It will be pasta, I swear to you, that will unite Italy," unquote. Actually, in Italy we have hundreds of different kinds of pasta, yes. Different from city to city, in regions. And you mention in your book some funny names like orecchiette, tiny ears, vermicelli, little worms, strozzapreti, priest stranglers, and so on. What is the strangest shape of pasta that you have ever eaten?
Well, I guess perhaps the chitarra, in the South that you find that supposedly looks like a guitar. But I also found that when we visited the islands, like when you go to Sardinia, when you go to the Aeolian Islands off of Sicily, when you go to Capri and Ischia, it seems like the islands also have pastas I've never quite seen the shape of before, that it's sort of unique to, and they have dialect names. But I remember a friend of mine in Rome who's a great cook, and she used to make something called, I wrote it down, capellacci alla zucca. And these are these little orange, they look like crumbled caps that like little tiny soldiers would wear. And inside there's pumpkin, there's Parmigiano, there's amaretti, and there's the mostardo di Mantua, and so it's not bland. A lot of things that we make in America with pumpkin, they're sort of on the bland side. It has a little bite to it, but they're the cutest things, these little orange caps and rows, as she makes them and cooks them. And but I like farfalle, the butterflies, and it's just fun to see what pasta has indeed conquered the world.
Yes. Let's move to R. R is for Roma, the Italian capital. You tell the story of how Rome was born on April 21st, 753 before Christ. Is there any special place that you recommend to visit in Rome, apart from the usual Colosseo and Vaticano?
Well, I really love the Palatine Hill. Now, the Palatine Hill is, you know, that's where, according to the mythology, Romulus and Remus, where they were upriver, and the tyrannical king had ordered them killed, and a servant put them in a basket, and they floated to the base of the Palatine Hill, and a shepherd or a lupa, lady of the night, may have found them, and they grew to manhood there, and that's where the founders of Rome started. And what I love about the Palatine Hill is you can reach it from the Forum, or you can reach it. There are different entrances to it. But if you go there early in the day or late in the evening, it's really quiet. The Forum can be just packed, as you know. There are just hundreds of people, and they're milling all around the Forum. And you hear birds song up there. And now they have there have been wonderful excavations. They have the House of Livia, and they may have found the Romulus's hut. And to me, it's like one of those places where if you just stay there long enough, and if you're just still and silent, and the wind is blowing, and the sky is that wonderful Rome blue, and the birds are making patterns in the sky, you feel that not just the days, the months, the years, but the millennia fall away, and you think, my God, this is Rome from 3,000 years ago. And and the thing is that I also I like the insides of Rome, mind you. I like the museums. I like the Capitoline Museum. I love the Villa Borghese. But I love spending time outdoors. The Borghese Gardens are another place that I just really, when I stayed in Rome for prolonged periods, I'd go jogging in the Borghese Gardens every morning. And that too is a place where time falls away. And I also really love, in recent years, they've done a wonderful job illuminating the Forum at night. And they have these fabulous slideshows that they do of Rome during the time of Augustus, Rome during the time of Caesar. And some people might think they're a tad cheesy. I like them, but it's almost an excuse to go and walk along the Forum with these beautiful lights on a moonlit night. And again, it's just sort of letting the magic and the history of Rome seep inside you. So I love getting that sense of timelessness.
Great suggestions.
The eternal city, you understand that when you're there.
Yes, great. S is for saints, for santi, saints. You explained that saints are very important in Italian life. Quote, in Italy, these blessed men and women seem more like big brothers and sisters. When there is a problem, for example, a car breaks down or a suitcase goes missing, Italians say, qualche santo ci aiuterà. Some saint will help us. And you imagine these spiritual first responders on a speed dial in heaven, jumping into action at a moment's notice. Very funny. In Italy, we celebrate not only our birthday, compleanno, but also our onomastico, the day associated to the saint with our name. Do you know, Dianne, that yesterday was your onomastico? It was a day in memory of Beata Diana degli Andalò, who was a nun.
I am so glad. I did not know that. And I remember my Catholic parents telling me that when they wanted to name me Dianne, the priest objected and said that there wasn't a saint. And, I guess goddess isn't good enough. So they named me Dianne Mary. And because that way I had Mary looking after me. And so when I got your note pointing out that there was this Diana, I looked her up, and it turned out that she lived way back in 1201 to 1236, and she came from a wealthy family, and she was having a fine, happy life. And then she listened to the Dominicans, and she found faith, and decided she wanted to go and join a group of women who were who would practice the virtues of the Dominicans. And so she went off to the convent, and it so angered her family that her brothers came to get her. And she struggled so hard that they broke her ribs, and they brought her back. But she wouldn't give up her faith and her determination. And she even talked her parents into giving the land for a church and for a convent. And she became the first, and she lived in peace there anymore. She became a nun, and she became the first mother superior, I guess you would call her, of this convent. So I'm very proud to have her as my patron saint. And thank you for introducing us.
Yeah, so you will remember next year you will celebrate your onomastico on June.
Yes, and I think that probably I should make up for lost time.
Yeah. We have a remark from the audience, Tracy. She says, when the city was empty, I guess New York City was empty from being in lockdown, seeing images of Rome standing silent and sentry and truly eternal is like what Dianne is talking about.
Yes,
right?
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
Okay, next, T. T is for tempo. That means both time and weather in English. You write that one of your favorite words derived from tempo is buon tempone. Who is a buon tempone, and why do you love this word?
Well, doesn't it sound great? Buon tempone. And it's, I guess you could translate it literally as a sort of a big good timer. But I looked it up in my etymological dictionary, and it defined it as someone who loves living cheerfully, allegramento, and it's a zest for life, and it's a joy in the moment. It's not a party animal, because we talk about good timers in English, and you kind of get, it's kind of like the frat boy or somebody who's the life of the party because they're drinking or they're dancing or they're funny. This is somebody, and I thought of it during the lockdown when there were so many people who could have been crushed, but there was always somebody out there playing his violin. There was somebody dancing. There were people making beautiful things. And so it seemed to me that in Italian, a buon tempone is somebody whose zest for life cannot be quenched, and who finds, even in the most meager moments, in the barest places, can find flowers to sniff and enjoy and share. And in Italy, it can be anyone. It doesn't have to be somebody of privilege and wealth. It's often just somebody who has that simple joy in being alive and cherishing the moment.
Yeah, right, totally agree. Well, next letter is very interesting. U is for uomo, man. And you, in the book, you illustrate uomo with a picture of Marcello Mastroianni, the quintessential modern uomo italiano, in your opinion. You recall that Mastroianni appeared in a staggering 140 motion pictures, playing all kinds of types. An impotent Sicilian cuckold, conman, drunk, lawyer, patriarch, assassin, homosexual, rapist, magician, novelist, police commissioner, director, beekeeper, priest, union organizer, dancer, professor, Russian aristocrat, and the film's first pregnant man. I didn't remember that. Beside La Dolce Vita, that maybe is his most famous movie in America, what other film with Mastroianni do you like?
Well, I love the pairing when everything he did with Sophia Loren, because the two of them together are just magical. And there's a very poignant film in which he does play a homosexual. It's called A Special Day, and she plays a very plain woman. They kind of come together. I love the fun of marriage Italian style, divorce Italian style, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And I also, as he aged, I think that he got more interesting looking as he got older. And but in Fred and Ginger with Giulietta Massina, and they play like the dance couple. I thought that was wonderful. So and I remember the first time I went to there's the Cinema Museum in the Borghese Garden, and they had this like 2-story high billboard of Marcello, and he had a sweater just casually dangling off one shoulder, and he had that wonderful and he said he always hated his looks, but I just I just thought, I do think he embodies the very sexy Italian man. And he'd always hate being called the Italian lover, the Latin lover, but certainly qualified in my book.
Great. In the meantime, I see that two of the students, Alexa and Hannah, are following us. Ciao, ciao, Alexa and Hannah. Soon I will give you the chance to ask Dianne your questions. Well, about Italian men, you also wonder, could the sophisticated, ever so confident uomo italiano classico, classic Italian man, be an endangered species? What is your answer?
Well, as I've been following different writings from the lockdown, what I've been reading is that the younger Italian men, they're helping with the child care, they're home, they kind of understand what goes into kind of keeping the family running, and I think they might be redefining, because I think that it's that the values of the Italian man, who always, his idea of bella figura was to just sort of not bother with a lot of the chores of life and of the child care. And when you're on lockdown, you don't have any choice about that. So I'm really curious as to so rather than becoming endangered, I like to think that maybe he's evolving.
I hope so. No, yes, I think he is. I think the Italian man is evolving. Well, V is for vino, wine. You wrote in your book that your husband and you own a vine in Umbria, not a vineyard, but a single vine in Vigna Lorenzo at Monte Vibiano Vecchio in Umbria. How come?
Well, way back in 2001, my husband took a sabbatical, and my husband and my daughter and I actually stayed at Monte Vibiano Vecchio, and we became it's a marvelous place. Its history goes back 1,000 years. They've been growing vines there, grapes there, wine there since Hannibal's time, 300 years before Christ, and so we feel very much committed to it sits atop a hill with a wonderful view of Umbria. And a few years ago, Lorenzo, who is, we had gotten to know his father very well, and then Lorenzo decided to sort of reopen this vineyard. And Bubia, who had been the first woman who worked that vineyard way back in the BCs, she had, her sons had gone off to war, and she had prayed to Bacchus to bring them back home after a terrible battle. And she promised that she would never sell the wine from this sacred vineyard, that she would only dedicate it to his temple. And the boys came marching back, and she kept it. She built a wall that still stands there, and she would always just keep this wine separate. So Lorenzo and his family did not want to sell the wine, but they asked for investors. And so the investment was that we bought a vine, and we named it for our daughter Julia. And every year we can get a bottle of a wine called Julia from this special vineyard. And they describe it as a vineyard where you aren't just drinking wine or tasting wine, you're tasting the love of the land, the passion that these people have for this place and for the wine and for the connections with other people. So to us, it's a very special vine.
Oh, great. That's a wonderful story. Really, thank you for sharing. The last letter is Zeta, Z. And I do agree with you that the very last word under the very last letter in the Italian dictionary makes me smile too. The word is zuzzurellone. It has 3 zeta, not 1, but 3 zetas. Can you explain what zuzzurellone means?
Oh, well, I looked it up again in my etymological dictionary, and it has been used in the past to describe a tomboy, a girl who's so full of spirit, or then it became for either a boy or a girl, but somebody who's sort of rollicky and adventurous. And it also, in one of the definitions was that it can be a child or an adult who, like a baby, thinks always of play and jokes. So it's a lighthearted soul, but also I always think of it with a touch of mischief. That this is somebody who's, you got to keep your eye on those zuzzurellone.
Yeah. Great. Now we have a question from one of the students, Hannah, who studies Italian with Professor Mario Costa at the Fiorello LaGuardia High School in New York City. Hannah asks, what is the most interesting thing that you learned about Italy when doing the research for your book?
Well, I think the discovery that I've been making over the last 3 decades, since I first went to Italy, it's always about not just Italy and its culture and its history and its accomplishments. It's about the Italians. The British writer Ian Forster said he gave the advice to his fellow countrymen and tourists, saying, "Don't just think of Italy as a place of antiquities and art. Get to know and understand the Italians, for they are more marvelous than the land." And I think whatever I'm writing about Italy, what always surprises me, interests me most, are the Italians, are just how they live life, the choices they make, their creativity, their resourcefulness, their resilience. And I think we've all seen that on display once again during the last few months.
Yeah. Talking about visiting Italy and your suggestions, we have a question from the audience from Barry. Sorry, I have to change my glasses. Barry says, Buonasera. What is your favorite off the beaten path place to visit? And what should not be missed there, Dianne?
Well, we do indeed have a favorite. We go back every year to Argentario, and Argentario is it's on the western coast of Tuscany, and it's a peninsula that sort of juts out into the Tyrrhenian Sea. And I live in California, and I live on the California coast. And so my husband says we travel however many 5,000 miles to go and once again be on the sea with hills and cliffs. But it's this spectacular coastline, wonderful water. And the thing that I love about Argentario is that you go there, and if you miss everything, if you don't go to a single church, if you don't go to a single museum, you'll still have this wonderful communion with the land. I think and the villages are small, and when you're by the sea, you eat food from the sea. If you go a little bit inland, you eat boar and beef and the more traditional Tuscan food. But you live in the sunlight, and if you go out on a boat, you sail, and that is my favorite off the beaten path. And I wouldn't say go there on your first trip. I'd say go see the art, go see the cities. But then when you want to retreat, I really do enjoy that. And and it's small, so it's not like I have to say be sure you don't miss that. You won't miss it. You won't miss. You drive around Argentario, you'll find it.
Great. So we have another question from Alexa, who studies Italian with the same professor, Mario Costa, at the Fiorello LaGuardia High School in New York City. Alexa asks, how did writing A is for Amore change your perspective of Italy? And how do you hope it influences your readers' impressions of Italy?
Well, basically, this book grew out of, these are my books behind me that I've written about Italy and as translated into different languages. So it grew out of that. And what I wanted to do, what inspired me to do this was, again, seeing how the Italians coped with and expressed their creativity during the lockdown. So I too wanted to do something that expressed my experience of Italy. And I wanted to do it one of the things that inspired me to was just the full range of Italian culture. There are so many. We talked today about comics, we talked about fashion, we talked about about music, about cooking. And so I kind of thought of it as a box of chocolates and, just little bonbons that I could, and that's I thought that I was looking for some way to organize it. And so the alphabet is very useful that way. And my idea was just that I thought of the things I missed, and they were like little delights, little tastes. And And that's what I was hoping to do, was saying to people, I know you can't go to Italy and you can't go back to these places or see the people that you want to see this year, but you can have a taste of Italy and you can have these little bonbons, and you can, I like to, people have asked me, they say, oh, don't you miss Italy? And I say, well, yes and no, because I feel that I go to Italy every day in my mind. And it's not the best way perhaps, but if that's the only way you can go, it'll do.
Okay, so actually you answered also a couple of questions from two other students, Angelina and Alina, who study Italian with Professor Maria Abate at the Palisades Park High School in New Jersey. They asked what inspired you to write this book, and why did you organize it in alphabetic order? You said already that, right? You want to add anything? Yeah.
Well, you know, again, it's I think that one of the things that we've learned, a positive thing we've learned during the lockdown, is that nothing really stops people from doing what they love to do. And, you know, we've seen comics doing stand-up, and we've seen ballet dancers doing pirouettes, and musicians playing off balconies. And so I think that, you know, I'm a writer. I wanted to keep doing what I love doing, and I love writing about Italy. So this was my inspiration. And also, one of the things about Italy is that this country has, Italy, even before it existed as a nation, it has been through everything. In the last, think of it, 3,000 years, you've had, you know, Vesuvius exploded, the Romans conquered the world, then the barbarians invaded, there were plagues, there were invasions, there were wars, there were political scandals. And the Italians always persevered. And often out of these terrible times came works of great beauty, whether that was art, sculpture, architecture, music, design, cars. Just, you know, there was this ability to take, and this is what Dante said. He said that you can make literature out of everything. You can make it out of the finest gold and the lowest excrement. You can do that. And so that's what I find so inspiring about the Italians. And that was what inspired this book. And it's just my little gift, my little sharing of my passion. And I just hope what people get out of it is a sense that they too, you too can enjoy these pleasures and treasures of Italy, and you too can find ways to express what your gift is, what your creativity is.
Thank you for your gift, Dianne. Another question from the audience, from Luciano. Luciano asks something about the poster behind you, Passione. Luciano says it is splendid. Can you tell us more about it?
It is the cover of my latest book. I didn't even mean to do an infomercial here, but it is splendid. And this is the book that came out last year. It's called Passione, How Italy Seduced the World. And it really is about all the ways in which Italy has stolen our hearts. It covers cooking, of course, and music, and cars and movies, and things that I couldn't include in my alphabetical presentation. And so, yes, and this cover would look great on anyone's bookshelf.
Sorry about my sneezing. The allergy is killing me. I'm sorry. Too much green around after the lockdown.
Yes.
Okay, we have more questions from the students. Tony, who studies Italian with Professor Daniel Alloy at the Norwalk High School in Connecticut, asks, if you had any chance to live life again, what is something you would have done differently while traveling in Italy?
Well, I thought this was a great question, because anytime you know, people ask you what would you have done differently in your life, that gives you pause. I actually hesitated to go to Italy. I thought, my husband and I, we went to England, we went to France, we went to Scotland, and Scandinavia, and somehow Italy seemed too foreign, too exotic, just too different. And so then when I had this opportunity on this business trip to go, I just followed my heart, and look what happened. So I would have gotten there sooner. I would not have, you know, it's not like I got there in my dotage, but still, I would not have had this hesitation. And the other thing was that And I think one of the things I don't regret is that I decided on my first trip to learn Italian. I would so encourage you all to study Italian, and there are these wonderful opportunities to study it online. And again, you don't have to become a master. You don't have to really read Dante in Italian. You can read a translation and see, you don't need to have those unless you're a student and you're seriously progressing in a serious study of Italian. But you can learn enough to make friends, enough to connect, enough to sort of understand the undercurrents and the nuances of the culture. So I only, every time I went, I would feel frustrated by my Italian, but I'd go back and I'd study some more and I'd learn some more. So, and I regret that my Italian gets very rusty, because and it's going to be even rustier because I'm away from Italy, but that's not going to keep me from going back and engaging and I hope hugging all the friends I got to know. There are people with whom I have only spoken Italian. They sometimes hear me speaking English and say, "Oh my God, you sound so different." And that, I think, is the real reward. But also, it's just a wonderful language. The words are fun. We just talked about a few of them today, but it's just a fun language to study, and a fun, and especially when you're doing it as a hobby, as a pleasure. I never felt that way. I studied French and German. I never felt that way about either of them.
Okay, that's flattering for us. Well, another question from a student, Jeffrey, who studies Italian with Professor Maria Abate at the Palisades Park High School in New Jersey. Jeffrey asks, are all the stories in the book true? If not, what inspired you to write such detailed stories about these moments that happened to you in Italy?
These are all true. You go to Italy often enough, you're going to have adventures. What can I say? And they are the first person stories are all my stories, but they also led me to other stories. There's in the chapter As for Amore, I talk about Ginevra and how this is this wonderful ghost story from Florence. It's about a young woman who fell in love with a commoner, and her parents forced her into a better marriage with a rich merchant, and she was so unhappy and despondent, and she took to her bed and she didn't move, and one day her husband thought she was dead, and so he rushed her off, thinking to the church to be for a funeral, because he thought it might be the plague, and her parents wept, and he just was everybody was very sad. And then lo and behold, she woke up. And she made her way back to her husband's house, and he wanted nothing to do with her. But he said, "You're a ghost. I'll buy more masses for your soul." She went to her parents' house, and they said, "Oh, my darling, we know you're in heaven. We'll pray for you." And then she went back to the house of the man who loved her, and he took her into his arms and took her up to his room and nursed her back to health. And then her husband said, "Wait a second, she's mine. You've got to bring her back." And they went to an ecclesiastical court, and the bishop said, "No, she died." And that ended her first marriage. So now she can marry her true love. So these are stories, I think that's a story I found just in my research. And one of the things I love about doing research about Italy is there's always a great story. There's always an account that you can find. And it's a pleasure for me as a writer just to share these stories. And then I have the stories that happened to me too, and happened to my family, and it's all part of the fabric, and it's like putting together a tapestry with the foreground and the background. And I think everyone who goes to Italy comes back having had an adventure, and I'm lucky enough to write about mine.
What is the funniest thing that happened to you in Italy that maybe we didn't mention in the book?
Oh goodness, it's when I think of it's not that the things are. I mean, we've had our share of lost baggage and little disasters, and yet they always sort of turn around in the end. Of arriving at a villa that we rented, there was nobody there. It was the dead of night. The dogs were howling, and someone comes along and rescues us, and they turn out to be lovely people. Or I traveled to around Sicily during Easter time, and there were these fabulous festivities. and just people would sort of sort of take me to show me these different projects they were working on. So it's all when I think of it, I think there's a quote about Italy is that whatever happens to you, your memory is of being happy, and that's certainly what my memory is of being happy, being open, and spending time with these wonderful people.
Yeah. Tracy from the audience asks whether you are working on some new project on Italy.
Well, I am. This is it. A is for Amore was my project, and I just finished that. And so I don't know. I think that our lives are all sort of in a holding pattern. But I was thinking that at the very least, I like doing this little project that I just make available online, and I can share, and I don't have to, you know. And so I was thinking maybe I should do a sort of alphabet thing with Italian food and cooking. What do you think?
Ah, that's a brilliant idea. Yes.
That might be fun, right?
I could help you if you want.
Good.
Yes. Next question from Andrea. Andrea asks, what is social life in Italy different from that in America?
Well, I think that the family part of it, you know, that you're you don't just get to, when we've gotten to know Italians, then we've gotten to know their spouses, their children. We've gotten, you know, that whole web. Whereas here, it's possible you work with people in an office for decades, and you might never meet their spouse, you might never meet their partner, might never meet, you know, you don't share that. So it's kind of, and it's you know, when you have a meal, it's like, well, of course you're going to be with the family, and you're going to be in a home, and at first that was sort of you know, here we meet at restaurants, say, you know, and you're you know, with your colleagues, or you go out to dinner together, or have, and there it was, and it's such a wonderful thing to be taken into someone's home and to sort of see where they live, and they want you to meet their children, they want to know all about your children. And for our daughter, who you know, she's I think she was around, she was young when 12 or so when we started spending extended times in Italy, and so when she applied for a job and they asked what her ethnicity was, she said Italian. Because I think she just thinks of it as, yes, you know, I'm part of this extended family. She's blonde and blue-eyed, you know, but Italian at heart.
That's very sweet, very sweet of hers. Well, you gave us already a lot of suggestions about how to learn Italian, but what are the most difficult obstacles to overcome for an American, in your opinion?
I think self-consciousness. I think that we're you know, we're just sort of afraid that we'll you say we'll sound foolish, we'll sound ignorant, we'll sound you know, and nobody likes those feelings. But I really do believe that Italians meet you more than halfway, and that they're not going to really, if you use the feminine instead of the masculine, you know, they'll figure they really want to communicate. I think the other thing is that I think Americans are afraid of languages in general, you know, because we live in this country where everything is in English, and where we don't really have to, you know, in Europe, you're constantly hearing other languages. You realize that you have to learn to get by in other languages. And so, and I think there's a sense of work, you know, that you're going to have to really work at it. So my advice for anybody learning any language, but particularly Italian, is just try everything, immerse yourself. There's a wonderful Italian word, inzuppare, you know, like you put a biscuit in the coffee, or it's like you put yourself in the soup. You know, listen to the music. If you like pop music, there are wonderful Italian songs. If you like opera like me, there's of course fabulous opera. You know, watch the television shows. Look at look at some Italian sites. There are great fashion magazines, sports magazines, and just let it permeate your soul. And even if you're not working at it, you're absorbing it. And so I think that getting over the sense that indeed, oh my God, I have to do this drill, and I have to figure out the congiuntivo, and you know, all of these things, that you can just sort of relax more about it, and just sort of try making it part of your life as a pleasure. And I think that there is a sort of osmosis involved.
Yeah, good suggestions. Now, some advice for us Italians. What would you recommend to us Italians in order to better welcome American visitors?
Well, I think that the problem you're going to have is sort of holding us back. You know, you've been invaded before. Don't want, but I have this feeling that there's so many people who have this pent-up desire, and I know that like when so many of my friends have sent pictures of like what the Vatican museums are like now with no one in them, you know, and as one of my friends wrote and said she spent like an hour alone in the Sistine Chapel, you know, just looking at it in awe. So I think that on the one hand, we just want to experience some of that, not realizing that we're the horde, you know, we bring the crowd with us. So I think that, and I think also, I would like to think that Italians are going to welcome us, that other than the fact that your cities will be crowded again, that you know, that we will be contributing to as the economy starts up again. But I guess I would say that there's such common humanity these days that we looked at Italy. I remember looking at Italy and my heart just breaking several months ago, not realizing that within weeks, it seemed like days, we too would be on lockdown. We too would be struggling with the same issues. We too would have our hearts in our throat and, you know, just worrying about different people we love and seeing these situations that were so terrible. So I think right now that, and I think that's one of the things that I've always learned from Italians, is that Italians embrace their humanity. That's where their resilience comes from, and this acceptance of life, the good and the bad. That is my dog sneezing in the background. But that I think now that we all are just going to reach out to each other with this common humanity, and the fact that Americans do share a genuine love of your culture and a genuine desire to respect it and learn more about it, and I think we're going to prize it even more. I know that there are places I just so look forward to seeing again, people I so look forward to hugging. Is that going to be possible again? Foods I can't wait to taste. You know, just the experience. So I think that I hope we aren't overly enthusiastic in as we descend upon you, but I think that where we're going to meet is with a renewed feeling of appreciation for each other and for our shared love of Italy.
Great. Your love letter to Italy is really beautiful. Thank you, Dianne. I think we have one last question from the audience. Tracy again. Tracy has just booked a travel to Sicily in October. Congratulations. Who is the saint of travel that I need to pray to?
I don't know. I'll have to look that one up. Buon viaggio, though. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah. So I thank you so much, Dianne, for all your passion, and I hope that it has been contagious to some of our followers, and that more friends will enroll into the IACE courses at the Italian Cultural Institute. I thank all the professors and the students who have read your book. And by the way, I remind all of our friends that they can download it for free on Dianne's website. And again, it has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. Thank you all for following us. I don't know if you, Paolo, want to say the last words.
I have some troubles with the video, but I'm joining just with the audio. And let me also thank both of you and all the students, Hannah and Alexa, who were with us throughout the webinar. And thank you, Ilaria. Thank you, Berardo, for this wonderful idea. And thank you, everybody, for following us. Make sure to keep doing that through our social media and our website, IACE and the Italian Cultural Institute. Good night, everyone.
The Facebook page of Dianne, who has a lot of followers as well.
Well, thank you all. Grazie a tutto. A tutti.
Ciao, buona serata e buon appetito.
Alla prossima.
Alla prossima.